Welcome back to the Power Panel. Rick, Yolande, Marty, and Kathleen are with us. Some independent senators are asking the Senate ethics officer to look at Senator Beyak's actions in posting what they call offensive letters on her government website. So what authority does the Senate have to impose any consequences if it feels Beyak violated their code of conduct? Yolande, I'd like to bring this question to you, particularly since this involves independent senators. It's the Trudeau government that's been trying to mix things up in the Senate. And in fact, I believe there are a couple of Liberal cabinet ministers who have asked for the Conservatives' help in trying to get these letters down. But of course, she's not a Conservative senator anymore. What's your sense of how much control that anyone really has other than Lynn Beyak and what she posts on her website?
I'm not quite sure how much control that they would have in terms of being able to take action, but whenever you're using a government website or you're using tax dollars to do it right there, I think that there is you've got your hand in it, and that they have a word to say on it. And I think it's important for the Senate, given everything that we've talked about in the past few years with respect to conduct and being able to be held accountable to the public, even if you're not elected but appointed. It is important that they send this message and that this is looked into, because her actions are absolutely reprehensible, and I think that they're doing the right thing in terms of asking and requiring that there's further action taken there.
Marty, I'm curious what you think about whether or not other members of the Senate ought to have the power to compel another senator to take something off his or her website.
Probably, but the problem is the wording. And just first of all, I want to say all props to Robert Jago, who's the guy who broke this story, who was going around the senator's website just looking at this kind of stuff and was the one that brought it to everyone's attention. So good on him. The problem that I think that we have is that the wording, I'm just pardon my notes, is the wording in it is senators' conduct shall uphold the highest standards of dignity inherent to the position of senator. That is remarkably broad. And it's going to be the Senate Ethics Committee that sort of has to parse to what extent, is the fact that these letters are up there against the dignity of the Senate. That is up to them to discuss. But I mean, just from the get-go, it's a very, very broad statement, and you could arguably, there's a whole swath of misdemeanors that sort of fall into that category. So I think all this to say is I think it's a bit too broad.
Rick, she has been making the case. In fact, I believe she has a new posting, Senator Beyak does, on her website about freedom of speech and giving voice to the opinions of various Canadians. Where do you stand on the question of whether or not others in the Senate ought to be able to compel her to remove all of this?
I guess I'm a little bit. I put me down as becoming concerned about freedom of speech in the country, not just in this instance, but generally. I mean, people are veering away from simply disagreeing with each other or denouncing each other if they want to go that far, or putting people outside their caucuses or whatever, to actually trying to expunge any possibility of people having opinions or expressing opinions that are different from what other people think is the right thing to be saying. We have laws against hate crime in this country. If someone is veering into that direction, that can be looked at. But, where there's political disagreement about things, we could go back through 150 years of Hansard and probably find lots of experiences.
You don't want to go back 150 years in history on this subject, though, Rick. That's
no, I know. I don't mean just on this particular subject. I think that people are trying to whitewash the record. They're trying to whitewash the fact that there is some disagreement about these things. The Conservative leader in the Senate has asked her to remove this material on behalf of the party's leader. She refused. They put her outside the caucus. If the Senate has a protocol that it actually wants to try to enforce here that goes beyond that, then I guess they're welcome to try to do that. But I do think we're actually veering into the area of censorship and excessive political correctness. If people disagree about things, let them disagree. That's democracy.
Before we Actually, before we get to either of you, I just want to play a piece of tape that is very, I think, relevant to this. Last week, Terry Milewski asked Saskatchewan Senator Lillian Dick about the letters Beyak posted, and I want everyone to take a listen to that exchange.
There is a small group of people in Canada who have racist views. Well, Senator Beyak has said that, well, she's representing the views of her constituents, and the letters of support which she posted, clearly they were freely written by Canadians stating their opinions. So why should they be swept under the rug? Why don't they have the right to be heard? And even if you don't like them, isn't it, well, educational to say the least, to see for ourselves the tone and the content of what these constituents believe?
Yes, well, they do certainly have a right to their opinion, but here's the issue. When it comes to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, some Canadians seem to believe that you have complete freedom of speech, that you can say whatever you want. Well, that's not true. Those people do have a right to their opinion. Unfortunately, a lot of the opinion is based on misinformation, and that's really the critical point. If you don't really understand the history of Canada, or you don't really understand what your rights are, if you don't really understand and you're saying things like all Aboriginals don't pay taxes, that's wrong. That's misinformation.
I want to give Kathleen a chance to weigh in here. Should this, if indeed you believe this should be taken down, should it be, as Senator Dick says, because it creates misunderstanding, or should it be because it's offensive? What would be the grounds for taking this down?
Well, there's a couple of different points are raised. You know, Rick raised the point that this is encroaching on people's freedom of speech, that it is encroaching on getting close to censorship. I would say that the issue that he failed to raise, and that Senator Lynn Beyak didn't get to, is the fact that this is a taxpayer-funded website. The resources that go into this are supported by Canadians' taxes, and no way should there be something that is either misinformation or hateful that is posted on that. And that is the challenge. You know, I have nothing.
Look, I got bad news. I got bad news for you, Kathleen. There is a lot of misinformation posted on Government of Canada websites and various parliamentary websites. If we're going to make the test here, misinformation, we got a big job on our hands. But the question of whether something's hateful is different, and I don't think we should lump those two things together. If something's hateful, it can actually be prosecuted. So go find the test.
But the challenge is right now is that there is no mechanism right now, Rick, within the Senate to do anything. As Yolanda has said, we have examined the conduct of senators on this television show backwards and forwards. There isn't an HR strategy in order to remove someone who has potentially committed sexual assault. There isn't right now an ability to force someone to be removed from office when they post hateful things. The Senate has itself undertook a Senate modernization report that was released in October of 2016, it itself said that it wanted to move towards a greater protection of minorities, including Aboriginals and underrepresented peoples. Yet when it comes forward with recommendations time after time, they fiddle with things like order papers, you know, as opposed to creating policies where an unelected and unaccountable Senate that does something that is contrary to Canadian values can't be corrected.
You're raising a lot of important questions there. But let me go back to the first point that you made, which is, you know, taxpayer-funded site. And the issue is whether the point of view, the opinions of taxpayers should themselves be scrubbed off.
We don't know who they are. They don't even put their last names on it. I'm sorry, that's not freedom of speech. That's called trolling.
Marty, can I ask if there were last names on this, would this somehow be better?
Look, I've written a lot about this, and I am of the firm opinion as a journalist that anytime you are compelled to put your real name on something, all of a sudden your freedom of speech gets a lot truncated by yourself, because
But Marty, as a journalist,
you know what you're saying is unacceptable. This is the exact case here. All she has to do is, okay, put all letters all you want on the website. Use your real name.
We also don't know if the letter writers did, right? I mean, to be fair, there's a lot we don't know about here, and these people may have put their names on it. She may have decided to remove them to protect those people's privacy. We don't. So in terms of the accountability, I don't think we know enough about that. But isn't this truly about the content? Be that
as it may, the letters that are on her site do not have their full names on them.
And she's a senator. Like, I mean, I understand we've had so many debates about the Senate, the existence of the Senate, but in our current system, the Senate is in place, still exists. Until there's a constitutional change, that is going to be there. And you can't treat this situation like Mr. or Mrs. Tremblay at the end of the street opening their own little personal website, just talking, and then we're freedom of speech. You are an appointed senator, and with that comes responsibility, tax dollars as well. So there should be some kind of accountability in terms of what you're putting out there.
I'm sure if we went through the comments section on various under various articles on the CBC website, we would find similar things being
Not posted by a senator. Different story.
She-
And the comments are moderated on the CBC website.
posted by the country's national broadcaster. You know,
Country's national broadcaster moderates their site and they take them
Well,
off.
I mean, I suppose one could argue that the senator chose these for her website, so in a manner of speaking, have been moderated. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
And ultimately, there
Look,
is
I
no
agree
accountability.
if
There's no way
something
for Canadians to reflect on Senator Beyak's actions and then vote her out. Because you know what? The Senate is unelectable. It's unaccountable. There's no mechanism.
She's there
Harper
till
appointed there.
2024,
She's there till she's what? 75? $90 million a year.
Okay,
$90 million
we've interrupted
a year.
Rick
Canadians.
we've interrupted Rick a few times, and I'd like to give him a chance to just make his.
well, if we make this about everything, we won't get anywhere. You know, we want to abolish the Senate. They shouldn't be there that long.
I tried not
we don't
to go
like how we don't like how the Board of Internal Economy doesn't work or works or whatever.
She's NDP.
I agree.
She can't help herself.
I agree there's lots of problems with the Senate. But, you know, the issue here is the posting of of individual opinions by individual Canadians and whether or not that itself deserves throwing someone out of the Senate. And I would say to you, you know, we're getting really quite into the area of censorship. You know, yes, it's fine, Marty, you say the website, the comments of the CBC articles on the website are moderated, but I bet you can find these very same opinions expressed there somewhere. You know,
Right,
because
but they're not promoted
actually
by a senator, Rick. That's a different story. The other rule of thumb, too, is you look at some of those letters. If you replace the word Aboriginal or Native as it's, I have examples of them. I'm not going to read them.
I find it very strange that a journalist...
You replace the word Aboriginal or Native with Jewish or Sikh, I guarantee you there'd be a hell of a uproar.
I find it very strange that a professional journalist like yourself would be advocating some kind of subjective exercise where people go through other people's opinions and decide what can and can't be
That's what
put
she
in the
did.
public domain.
The senator herself did that.
No, well, so she did. And her party said, you should please take these down. And she refused. So now she's outside the caucus. So now we're saying she can't even be a senator? Is that what we're actually saying?
No, now her colleagues in the Senate are going to want to hold her accountable to that. That's what we're saying.
Yes, yeah, in a witch hunt. And they're going to probably try to railroad her right out of the Senate over this. So the root cause of this is the publishing of opinions held by a senator and communicated, by the members of the public who communicated them with a senator who shared them with the public.
We don't even know if it's members of the public. We don't know who they are.
Okay.
Oh, so we're just going to say they're fake letters. Is that what we're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no way there's no veracity. There's no way to identify the veracity. We also don't know who these people are. Every time you don't put your name on something, you get untethered from reality.
Look, I agree with you about
responsibility.
anonymous postings on the internet. I don't understand why we have allowed that to occur, and I think the media have a lot to think about in that regard, and one day they should start applying the same standards as we do for letters to the editor, where they not only ask for your full name, they ask for your address, and they confirm that in fact it was you that wrote that letter. But for some reason on the internet, where it's forever, we let people post whatever they want anonymously. It's kind of crazy. I think it's crazy.
Okay.
But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about freedom of expression in terms of correspondence between Canadian citizens and a member of the Senate.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Very passionate debate. Thank you to all the members of our Power Panel today, Kathleen, Rick, Yolande, and Marty. Power and Politics will be back right after this.